Chapter 4. Have the guts to leave the opportunity. In a world of opportunities, it is important to know which ones are for you and which ones are not. To identify this difference, you must first know what it is you truly want and what it is that you don't want. Without this knowledge, it is both more challenging for you to align with things that you are truly meant for and difficult for you to leave the opportunities that are not. The ability to find opportunities that pique your interest is one thing, and being able to leave opportunities that are no longer in line with your overall goals are crucial skills needed to find your personal success. Every day, people take jobs for the money with little to no consideration for their purpose. Often, when they uncover that they have been living outside of their calling, it becomes more difficult for them to pivot towards their passion, having grown a strong dependency on the routines and habits they have become accustomed to. It is crucial to be able to prioritize your purpose when you're looking to live a life of fulfillment. In 2014, I started my first business. It was in a new town and state far from home. No one understood what I was doing, but I knew I was called to make a major impact. As I saw it, to receive different results, I needed to do things differently than what I saw other people around me doing. As it is to be expected, the drastic move I made to relocate to Nampa, Idaho was accompanied by a drastic lesson that I'll never forget. As a highly motivated and fresh entrepreneur, I was set to drive across the country. And when I arrived in Idaho, none of that motivation began to fade. I hit the ground running, secured an apartment, established a relationship with my Costco managers, and got to work generating income for my business. It was not long before I started hiring, training, and building representatives. Everything was great. As time went on, the quality and quantity of my representatives grew, and before I knew it, I had an all-star team that regularly produced at levels of the best teams in the nation. I often treated them to team nights, where we usually went bowling and bonded over pizza. Chevy continued to mentor me and was a huge support to my team. He never hesitated to tell me how proud he was of the work we were doing. He would always joke about how I was making more money than he was. Of course, he wasn't complaining because he received a passive profit from being the one who promoted me. Logistically, everything was going great. I had no idea that there would be another level of development that would take place. Many people talk about IQs and developing their skills, but at that time in my life, I could have used mentoring in mastering my mind. I had no clue that I would be vulnerable and fall into a pit that was the holes of my understanding of myself. Being like many other normal people, I subconsciously associated my value and my worth with external circumstances. I was unaware that I had checklists of things that needed to be in place in my life for me to feel worthy and therefore happy. On that list was sufficient income to take care of myself, a social life that made me feel loved and wanted by my friends as well as family, and a healthy romantic relationship. At the time of moving to Idaho, all three items on my list were checked off. But by month 5 of living there, I realized that these things were not guaranteed and therefore could not be the reasons I considered myself happy. My happiness was based on conditions, and I have learned that conditional happiness is misery. As my emotional experience changed in one of these areas, I noticed that the others would also be impacted. Learning this the hard way made a major impact on me when I saw how I allowed my romantic relationship to affect who I was showing up as in my business. You see, what had happened was I took a relationship that never really developed a strong foundation of trust, gave it a bunch of reasons to never build that trust. Then I made it long distance almost simultaneously. And to add insult to injury, I was also cohabiting a space with an administrator who was a woman. As I look back, this situation had shitstorm written all over it, but I'm always going to choose optimism before pessimism any day. I held on to the relationship not knowing that I was signing up to be constantly proving myself, reassuring my girlfriend that I was loyal. She may not have been able to see it, but I honestly wanted nothing to do with anyone but her. That is, until her constant accusations were enough to begin to shift my energy away from her. I sought and found the togetherness I craved. Well, I thought. After a few drinks and hooking up with someone else, it did not take long for my guilt to eat me alive. At this point, I needed her approval before I could even consider being worth something. My self esteem was gone, and I found myself grasping for anything or anyone to return it. I remember interviewing candidates and training my team by day and arguing at night every night. The loneliness I felt was unbearable, so I reached out to my family, friends, and even my mentor. I did this until even I felt like I was becoming a nuisance. I drank cheap wine, smoked black and milds regularly, while eating my usually chicken flavored ramen noodles. This had nothing to do with being broke. Instead, it was all a result of being undermotivated and overwhelmed. I can recall a multitude of out of control emotional breakdowns that usually lasted all night. One of them resulted me in burning a box of gifts and things I received from her. That was not me. And I knew I was in a place I did not want to be, but I did not know how to elevate myself. It was not long before my terrible habits and self sabotaging mindset trickled over and affected my otherwise healthy business. I noticed a decline in my team's productivity, and my superstars were slowly starting to leave. They knew I was not having fun anymore. I was showing up late for important meetings and energetically disconnecting from them. I do not blame them. By the time I realized I was the problem, it was too late. I understood the power of positive thinking, but I thought it was just something you chose to do. Now I know that 95% of our thoughts are the same thoughts we had the day before, and to change that, I would need to work on my subconscious programming, where I was only struggling to maintain my conscious mind. In desperate need of approval, I began to prioritize my relationship to my business. I decided to buy a plane ticket to New Jersey. I was going to surprise my girlfriend for her birthday, March of 2015. A week after booking the flight and preparing to repair my relationship so that I could be happy again, I realized that I booked the wrong week somehow. I frantically called the airline to have it changed with no luck. I called business associates to see if there was anything they could do, but they had no reason to care. I called my girl to tell her the news and went from feeling bad to unthinkably worse. I broke down in front of my employees. It was at this point that I knew I would not be able to repair the business and cared so much more about my relationship. Unfortunately, my priorities were off because my happiness was dependent on this relationship surviving, and I had not yet been able to identify that fact. I decided I would take my first opportunity to get back home. I took a road trip. A road trip was when an owner in another market needed coverage due to being understaffed. They were a great opportunity to send representatives to different areas of the country to experience the differences and prepare them to eventually take over their own market. This was meant for reps, not owners like me. But I found one in Long Island that was close enough for me to get home, and it would not cost me a dime. I took the opportunity with major intent just to get home. When I arrived, I spent 24 miserable hours over the course of the next 2 days in Costco wanting to be any place but there. I sold nothing. When I finally got the chance, I took the Cadillac Escalade they provided me with and drove to the Bronx to visit my cousin, then to New Jersey, home. Finally, when I went to see my girlfriend, I had the pleasure of being accused to my face, in person. Except at this point, she was right. I had cheated, and I would admit to it. Whoever said the truth will set you free was a genius. After releasing my need for the relationship in exchange for the truth, I also quit the business I found that I was not passionate about. I could finally exhale and begin to heal. I flew back to Idaho just to gather my things, and a week later, I packed my car and drove back to the East. Leaving my previous commitments behind when we were no longer serving each other was the best move I could have made because it opened my mind to what else may be out there for me. While some people will consider this to be a major failure, a waste of time, or a heartbreak for no reason, I cannot think of it any other way than a learning experience. I took this as one of the biggest lessons of my life. Never put the key to your happiness in somebody else's pocket. Making someone else responsible for your happiness is not fair to them or you. You see, that is a responsibility much too big for someone to handle. In fact, most of us struggle to keep ourselves happy while expecting others to do it for us. It is imperative that your commitments hold value. The way to build value in your commitments is by committing only to things that you want to do, not what you feel like you have to do. But not only that, you also want to be comfortable in changing your commitments when your desires change. Why? Because when you commit to something you're not excited about, you cut corners, your effort reduces, and you end up not being as productive as someone who is excited about what the opportunity would be. Integrity goes a long way, but the misconception is that having integrity means that you suffer and struggle through commitments you have made just because you gave somebody your word. In this chapter, I hope you learn it is okay to give them another word. It is over. Integrity is less about keeping your word and more about staying true to you. If you do not fill your cup first, you are powerless to properly serve anyone else. It is important to know when it is time to have the guts to leave the opportunity.